Okay, well, I was going to do True Q today, which, in a really, really quick summary, is one of those episodes that is Q does nonsense, and the story revolves around an NPC who would not be a player character, and the player characters need to figure out how to resolve the nonsense centered on said NPC. I guess that would be a workable idea. But I'm going to talk about something else today. Now, when looking at this and thinking about what I wanted to say about that episode, I actually had a different idea that come into my head. The fact that a lot of people described Amanda Rogers as a waifu character. And it suddenly occurred to me that the concept of waifu characters is a bit, one, nebulous, and two, kind of pointless. Because, well, it's more of a, perspective thing. It's based on what the person perceiving the character feels and thinks. And let's face it, casting Olivia d'Abo was actually one of those things where they genuinely were trying to find someone who would act adorable on screen and come across as young and vulnerable and needing protection while still being an adult. I don't remember if she did any other roles in Star Trek. Didn't think to look that up earlier. Oh, apparently not. Oh well. Anyways, so this is actually something that comes up with a lot of characters in a lot of different kinds of fiction, though. Like, most of the female crew of the Enterprise have had that get used to describe them at one point in time. Characters and other media have had that used to describe them in some various points in time. Like, here's Ariel, and I suddenly blanked on the name. This is actually not a random Amazon. This is actually the leader of the good faction of Amazons. Diona. Yeah, that's what it's called. Diona. And here we have Ariel again, and one of their allies, who is a barbarian called Shara, who is actually quite a competent melee fighter, despite looking like she's about 19 and, well, very physically fit. Yes. Anyways, and of course, it comes up with the X-Men a lot because of the fact that there are dozens of characters in X-Men, and most of them get drawn looking, you know, physically fit, shall we say. And to be honest, this is where things get kind of interesting, though, because several of the people who have written characters over the years have been asked, why did you write that character that way? And one that's come up several times is that the writers would just think about what kind of person do I want this character to be? And then think about real people they'd met in their own personal life who had something in common with the character they're writing, and then just ask themselves, okay, what would that person do? I mean, in Stan Lee's case, that was the logic he had for writing Peter Parker's Aunt May. It's just that when Stan Lee was writing Aunt May, he was remembering his own relatives who were, well, older than he was, and Stan was not exactly a young man at the time. So he's thinking of people who are realistically old enough to be Peter Parker's grandparents, not parents. which is part of the reason why Aunt May often gets drawn as an elderly woman, despite the fact that it doesn't logically make sense for her to be older than 50. But I digress. Thing is, when it came to writing various female characters, writing people who are young, attractive women, because most comic book characters are young and attractive, which applies to guys too. Yeah, this whole waifu fodder thing is not actually specific to female characters. It actually applies to male characters too. It's just that it gets a different name when it's male characters. Anyway, though, that is kind of what the whole logic, though, is that writers would think about a character's like, okay, I want this character to embody this aspect. And then think of a person that they've met, or maybe in some cases a fictional character, if that's easier for them, and, write that out. Thing is, that doesn't necessarily mean choosing a character that's a caricature. Often it means writing a character that, well, as Chris Claremont put it, I think he's writing a person who he wants to be seen as respectable and strong and dependable. And those are all things that you would consider to be positive qualities to have in a spouse. So simply writing a character having those positive attributes kind of makes the character waifu fodder by virtue of the fact that having those positive attributes makes the character that, which is one of those things where you stop and realize that's like I said earlier, is that the whole waifu fodder thing, in the end, it's really more about the perception of the person reading the material and not so much the person writing it. Like, yes, you will actually have people write characters that they want people to like and, maybe wish that they could, date that person if they were real. Sure, okay. Again, though, that applies to all comic book characters to some extent. So it's not exactly a thing that only applies to one gender. And that's one of those things that is kind of interesting to think about when writing characters in TTRPGs. Whether the players see the character as waifu fodder entirely depends on what the players want and with how the players um, naturally see characters um, in the wild, as the saying goes. And that is something that you need to keep in mind. You, as the person writing the character, can't directly change how people perceive the character. And there's very little you can actually do about it when, as I mentioned earlier, whether the character is seen as waifu fodder is a direct result of the character having positive qualities. When that's the case, yeah, just write a character, and if people decide to take the character that way, it's on them. It's just one of those. It's one of those things I've seen people rage about, and then when you ask them, it's like, okay, how would you do it differently? They're like, I don't know, because of the fact that ultimately you kind of can't avoid it. It's all up to perception, and Yeah. Anyways, but like I said, though, I said that's actually something that comes up with a lot of the characters in Star Trek. Is you find out that they did actually get canonically married. Like, you know, that's the thing that happened. If I remember right, they threw that in because Patti Yasutake actually did get pregnant, and so they decided to just like throw it into to one of the episodes as a thing that happens canonically in universe, and then made it a plot point in All Good Things that the anti-time singularity was messing with the fact that she was pregnant and causing bad things to happen as a result of that. Oh boy, yeah, that was fun. Anyway, I think that's about enough of this for now. Again, it's one of those things that, yes, it's a real thing. However, it's a real thing that is a side effect of writing characters. Is it avoidable? Well, it depends on what you mean by avoiding it. I mean, avoiding having it actually be a problem in story writing, yes. Just, write characters and don't focus on that aspect of things. But, other than that, there's really not a whole lot to do. Anyways, if you guys disagree, feel free to talk about it in the comments. I've had people post some very interesting things on rare occasions. On a few occasions, anyways. Had some very fun conversations in comments. Anyways, see you guys later.